The dust settled around his boots like a promise of trouble. Catherine Montgomery stood frozen on the porch of her father's general store, watching the stranger dismount his black stallion with the kind of confidence that made her heart skip against her will. His hat cast shadows across a face carved from prairie stone and desert sun, and when he looked up at her, those steel-gray eyes held something dangerous and magnetic all at once. "Store open." His voice was rough velvet, the kind that could smooth over lies or whisper truths in the dark. "Yes, sir." Catherine hated how breathless she sounded. At 22, she turned down every rancher's son and traveling salesman who'd come through Redemption Creek, Texas. She'd built walls around herself made of propriety and had dead mother's warnings about men who lived by the gun. But this man made those walls feel like paper. He stepped onto the porch, his spurs singing a metallic song. Up close, he smelled like leather and sage, and Catherine noticed the Colt Peacemaker riding low on his hip, the handle worn smooth from use. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, and when she did, she saw the ghost of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Need supplies," he said, but he wasn't looking at the store. He was looking at her like she was water and he'd crossed a desert to find her. Inside, Catherine's hands trembled as she measured out coffee beans and wrapped jerky in brown paper. Her father was in Austin settling accounts, wouldn't be back for 3 days. She was alone with the kind of man respectable women crossed the street to avoid. The kind mothers warned their daughters about in hushed voices after Sunday services. "You got a name?" he asked, leaning against the counter in a way that suggested he had all the time in the world. "Catherine. Catherine Montgomery. Pretty name for a pretty woman." He tipped his hat. "Name's Cole Maddox." The name hit her like a thunderclap. Everyone west of the Mississippi knew about Cole Maddox. The gunslinger who'd killed 6 men in a shootout in Abilene. The outlaw who'd robbed the Santa Fe Railroad and vanished into legend. The man with a $5,000 bounty that brought hunters from 3 territories. Her face must have shown her recognition because his expression hardened. "I see my reputation precedes me. You should leave." Catherine's voice shook, but she stood her ground. "The sheriff comes through here every afternoon." "I'm counting on it." Cole's smile was bitter. "That sheriff killed my brother 2 months back. Shot him in the street like a dog over a card game that wasn't even crooked. I've been tracking him ever since." Catherine's breath caught. This wasn't random. Cole Maddox had come to Redemption Creek for blood. "Revenge won't bring your brother back." "No," Cole agreed, his eyes softening as they traced her face. "But it's all I got left. Until about 5 minutes ago." The air between them crackled with something Catherine had only read about in the forbidden novels she kept hidden under her mattress. She knew she should run, should fire the warning shot from her father's rifle behind the counter. Instead, she found herself asking, what changed 5 minutes ago? Cole moved around the counter so smoothly she barely saw him coming. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "I saw something worth more than revenge. Worth more than that bounty on my head. Worth more than all the blood I've spilled. You don't know me." But Catherine didn't step back. "I know enough." His hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away, but she stood paralyzed as his rough fingers traced the line of her jaw. "I know you're brave enough to stand here talking to a wanted man instead of running. I know you got fire in you that this town's been trying to drown. And I know that if I ride away today, I'll regret it until my last breath." Catherine's world tilted on its axis. Every rule she'd ever followed, every proper behavior she'd practiced, suddenly felt like chains. "The sheriff will kill you." "Probably." Cole's thumb brushed across her bottom lip, and Catherine's knees went weak. "But some things are worth dying for. Question is, darling, are you worth living for?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. Tommy Chen stumbled through the doorway, his shirt soaked with blood. The young deputy hit the floor hard, and Catherine was moving before conscious thought kicked in, her medical training from helping Doc Wheeler overriding everything else. Cole's gun was already drawn, his body positioned between her and the door, his eyes scanning for threats. "Don't shoot," Tommy gasped, reaching toward Catherine. "Please, Miss Montgomery. They got Doc Wheeler. Shot him during a hold-up at the bank. I tried to stop them, but there were too many." Catherine dropped to her knees beside Tommy, her hands already assessing the wound in his shoulder. The bullet had gone clean through, which was lucky, but he was losing blood fast. "Cole, I need bandages from the back room. Clean white cloth, top shelf." She'd called him by his first name. The intimacy of it hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. But there was no time for embarrassment. Tommy's breathing was shallow, his skin going cold and clammy. Shock was setting in. Cole holstered his weapon and moved with surprising efficiency, returning with the supplies. He knelt beside her, and Catherine realized with a start that he knew what he was doing. His hands were steady as he helped her pack the wound, his movements practiced and sure. "You've done this before," she said, pressing hard to stop the bleeding. "More times than I care to count." His voice was grim. "Lost my brother because there was no one around who knew how to stop the bleeding. Sheriff shot him and rode away, left him dying in the street like he was nothing." The pain in Cole's voice made Catherine's chest ache. She understood now. The revenge he sought wasn't just about justice. It was about a wound that would never heal, a guilt that ate at him in the dark hours before dawn. Tommy's eyes fluttered open. "You're Cole Maddox." It wasn't a question. Even through his pain, recognition dawned. "You're here for Sheriff Blackwood." "Was," Cole said quietly, his eyes meeting Catherine's. "Plans changed." "Good," Tommy whispered. "Because Blackwood's not who you think he is. He's been running protection for the Garrett gang. They're the ones who robbed the bank today. Killed 3 people. Doc Wheeler tried to help one of the victims, and Blackwood shot him to keep him quiet." Catherine's hands stilled. Sheriff Marcus Blackwood had been a fixture in Redemption Creek for 5 years. He was respected, feared even. The idea that he was corrupt seemed impossible. "Tommy, are you sure?" "Saw it with my own eyes." Tommy coughed, and blood flecked his lips. "They're planning to rob the land office tomorrow. Going to steal all the deeds, burn the records. Half the ranchers in the county will lose their land. Including your father, Miss Montgomery." The world narrowed to that single point. Her father had spent 20 years building his business, had poured his life savings into buying the land where the store sat today. If those deeds disappeared, he'd lose everything. They'd lose everything. Cole's hand covered hers, warm and solid. "How many men does Garrett have?" 8, Tommy said. "Maybe 10. Too many for one deputy and a wanted gunslinger." "What about the marshal in Austin?" Catherine asked, but she already knew the answer. Austin was 3 days' ride, and Blackwood controlled the telegraph lines. No message would get through. "We're on our own." Cole stood, his face settling into hard lines. "Tommy, you know me by reputation. You know what I can do. But I can't take on 10 men alone. I need help." Tommy struggled to sit up, wincing. "The bounty on your head says you're a killer and a thief. But I've been wearing this badge for 2 years, and I've learned that reputations aren't always earned honest. My gut says you're a better man than Blackwood ever was." "Your gut might be wrong," Cole said honestly. "I've done things I'm not proud of. Killed men who probably deserved better. But I never shot an innocent, and I never let corruption hide behind a badge." Catherine looked between them, understanding crystallizing. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either they'd stop Blackwood and his gang, or Redemption Creek would fall into chaos. Her father would lose his land. Innocent people would suffer. And Cole Maddox, the man who'd walked into her life an hour ago and turned it upside down, would likely die trying to stop it. "I can shoot," she said quietly. Both men turned to stare at her. "My father taught me. I'm good. Maybe not gunslinger good, but good enough." "No." Cole's voice was flat. "Absolutely not. It's not your decision." Catherine stood, meeting his eyes with all the fire he'd seen in her earlier. "This is my home. My father's future. You need every gun you can get, and I won't sit in this store wringing my hands while good people die." Cole's jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he'd argue, but then something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "You understand what you're saying? These men won't hesitate to kill a woman. And I won't hesitate to protect what's mine." Catherine lifted her chin. "Besides, you said it yourself. Some things are worth dying for." "I said worth living for," Cole corrected, stepping close enough that she could see the war raging behind his eyes. "And I meant it. I've spent 3 years running from town to town, living for nothing but revenge. Then I met you, and suddenly I can see a different ending to my story. But not if you're lying dead in the street tomorrow." The raw honesty in his words stole her breath. "Then we better make sure we all survive." Tommy cleared his throat. "If we're doing this, we need a plan. Blackwood's smart. He won't make it easy." Cole tore his gaze from Catherine, the moment breaking like shattered glass. "Tell me everything about the land office. Every entrance, every window, every blind spot." As Tommy began to speak, Catherine felt the weight of her decision settling over her shoulders. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern was whether Mrs. Henderson would pay her tab before winter. Now she was planning to stand against corrupt lawmen and killers, alongside an outlaw who looked at her like she was salvation itself. Her mother would be horrified. Her father would lock her in her room. But Catherine had never felt more alive than she did in this moment, standing beside Cole Maddox while the sun set over Redemption Creek and tomorrow waited like a loaded gun. The moon hung low over Redemption Creek, casting silver shadows through the windows of the general store. Catherine had turned down the lamps hours ago, leaving only a single candle burning in the back room where Tommy slept, his wound dressed and his breathing steady. Cole stood at the window, his silhouette dark against the star-filled sky, watching the street with the eternal vigilance of a man who'd stayed alive by never letting his guard down. Catherine approached quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee she'd brewed on the small stove. She'd changed from her proper day dress into riding clothes, practical canvas pants and a cotton shirt that her father had forbidden her to wear in public. If tomorrow was going to be a fight, she needed freedom of movement, not layers of petticoats and propriety. "You should sleep," Cole said without turning around. "Tomorrow's going to be hell. So should you." She held out one of the cups, and he took it, his fingers brushing hers in a touch that sent electricity racing up her arm. "But I don't think either of us will." He smiled, a real smile this time, not the bitter edge he'd worn earlier. "Probably not." He sipped the coffee, his eyes closing briefly in appreciation. "You make good coffee. That's a rare gift out here." "My mother's recipe." She said a woman who could make good coffee and shoot straight would never lack for respect in the West. Smart woman. "She died when I was 16. Catherine moved to stand beside him at the window, looking out at the quiet street. Fever took her fast. 1 week she was singing in the kitchen, the next she was gone. My father never recovered. He built this store into an empire, but it was hollow. He was just filling the empty spaces where she used to be. Cole was quiet for a moment. My mother died when I was 8. Different circumstances, same hole in the world. He paused, his voice dropping. My brother Lucas was all I had left. We looked after each other, kept each other alive through things that should have killed us both. When Blackwood shot him over that card game, he didn't just kill Lucas. He killed the last person on earth who knew my real name, who remembered me before I became Cole Maddox the gunslinger. Catherine's throat tightened. What was your name? Before? Doesn't matter now. But there was longing in his voice, a hunger for someone to see past the legend to the man beneath. That boy died a long time ago. I don't believe that. Catherine set down her cup and turned to face him fully. I think he's still in there, buried under all the violence and running. I think he's the one who helped me save Tommy today instead of leaving him to bleed. I think he's the one who's planning to risk his life for a town full of strangers tomorrow. Cole's expression cracked, something raw and vulnerable breaking through. You see things that aren't there, Catherine Montgomery. You're looking at me with those clear eyes and imagining I'm some kind of hero. But I'm not. I've killed men. I've taken money that wasn't mine. I've done things in the dark that would make you run screaming. Have you killed innocent people? No. But the guilty have families too. Wives and children who didn't ask for their husbands and fathers to die. And did those men give you a choice? Catherine pressed. Or was it kill or be killed? Cole's jaw worked. Mostly the second. But not always. Sometimes I was just angry. Sometimes I was drunk. Sometimes I was young and stupid and thought being fast with a gun made me invincible. He set down his own cup and gripped the windowsill, his knuckles white. I'm not the man you deserve, Catherine. I'm not even close. Maybe not. Catherine's heart hammered in her chest, but she stepped closer anyway, close enough to feel the tension radiating from his body. But you're the man who walked into my store this morning and changed everything. You're the man who looked at me like I was worth more than my father's money or my family name. You're the man who's going to stand between this town and evil tomorrow, knowing you'll probably die. That's not heroism, Cole said roughly. That's penance. Call it whatever you want. Catherine reached up and placed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her hand. But answer me one question honestly. If tomorrow wasn't coming, if there was no fight and no revenge and no bounty on your head, would you stay? Would you give up running and build something real? Cole covered her hand with his eyes burning in the candlelight. For you? I'd give up everything. My guns, my name, my past. I'd become whoever you needed me to be. But that's not the world we live in, darling. Tomorrow is coming, and when it does, I'll either be dead or I'll have to run farther than ever before. Either way, you'll be better off without me. That's not your decision to make. Catherine's voice shook with emotion. You don't get to decide what's best for me, Cole Maddox. I'm a grown woman who survived loss and loneliness and 22 years in a town that tried to make me small and quiet and proper. I've been waiting my whole life for something real, something that made my blood sing and my heart race. And then you walked through that door. Catherine. Her name on his lips was a prayer and a curse. If I touch you now, if I let myself have this, walking away tomorrow will kill me worse than any bullet. Then don't walk away. She rose on her toes, her face inches from his. Stay. Fight with me tomorrow, and if we survive, stay. Build something with me. Be the man you were before the world made you hard. For a heartbeat, Cole stood frozen, every muscle taut with restraint. Then something broke inside him, and he hauled her against his chest, his mouth crashing down on hers with desperate hunger. The kiss was nothing like the chaste pecks Catherine had received from town boys. It was fire and fury and need, his hands tangling in her hair while hers gripped his shoulders like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. You still a virgin? He whispered, the question rough and intimate. Catherine's cheeks flamed, but she met his eyes without flinching. Yes. His smile was wicked and tender all at once. Not for long, darling. Not if we survive tomorrow. Not if you'll have me. I'll have you, Catherine breathed. In every way that matters. Cole kissed her again, slower this time, savoring her like she was something precious he'd been searching for his whole life. When he pulled back, his eyes held a promise that made her knees weak. Then I'll give you everything. My protection, my loyalty, my future. Every good thing I've got left, it's yours. And tomorrow? Catherine asked, needing to hear him say it. Tomorrow we fight. And then we live. Dawn broke over Redemption Creek like a wound, red and angry on the horizon. Catherine stood in the shadows of the land office, her father's Winchester rifle heavy in her hands, her heart beating a war drum against her ribs. Across the street, Cole waited behind the water trough, his twin Colts gleaming in the early light. Tommy, pale but determined, had positioned himself on the roof of the dry goods store, his deputy's rifle loaded and ready. They'd spent the dark hours planning every detail. Blackwood and the Garrett gang would come at mid-morning when the land office opened. They'd expect an easy target, an elderly clerk and maybe one or two early customers. They wouldn't expect a trap. Catherine's palms were slick with sweat. She'd shot rabbits and coyotes, had practiced her aim until her shoulder ached, but she'd never pointed a gun at another human being. The weight of what was coming pressed down on her like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. Remember, Cole had told her before they'd taken their positions, his hands cupping her face with heartbreaking tenderness, you hesitate, you die. These men won't show you mercy because you're a woman. They'll kill you without a second thought. So when the moment comes, you pull that trigger and you don't stop until the threat is gone. Understand? She'd nodded, but now, in the growing light with her finger resting on the trigger guard, Catherine wondered if she had the steel in her spine to actually do it. To take a life. To cross that line that separated her from Cole's violent world. Movement down the street caught her attention. 8 men rode into town, Sheriff Blackwood in the lead, his badge catching the sunlight like a false promise. They moved with the confidence of men who believed themselves untouchable, laughing and talking as they approached the land office. Catherine recognized 2 of the Garrett brothers from wanted posters in her father's store. Cold-eyed killers who'd left a trail of bodies across 3 territories. Her hands tightened on the rifle. These weren't just criminals. They were monsters who'd killed Doc Wheeler in cold blood, who'd planned to destroy her father's livelihood and the futures of dozens of families. Whatever happened in the next few minutes, the world would be better without them in it. Blackwood dismounted, his hand resting casually on his gun. Garrett, you and your boys handle the clock. Make it quick and quiet. We grab the deeds, torch the files, and ride out before anyone's the wiser. Like taking candy from a baby, one of the Garrett brothers said, his scarred face splitting into a grin. Not quite, Cole's voice rang out across the street, sharp and clear as a blade. He stepped out from behind the water trough, his hands hovering over his guns. But you're welcome to try. Blackwood spun, his face draining of color. Cole Maddox. Should have known you'd show up eventually. You murdered my brother, Cole said, his voice deadly calm. Did you think I'd just let that go? Your brother was a cheat and a drunk, Blackwood snarled. He got what he deserved. Funny thing about that card game, Tommy called from his rooftop perch, his rifle trained on the sheriff. I did some checking. Lucas Maddox wasn't even in town that night. You shot him because he saw you meeting with the Garrett gang. He knew you were corrupt, and you killed him to keep him quiet. The street fell silent except for the wind whistling between buildings. Blackwood's hand twitched toward his gun, but 8 against 3 were odds even he could calculate. Stand down, Blackwood, Cole commanded. Tell your men to drop their weapons. You're all under arrest for murder, robbery, and corruption. Blackwood laughed, the sound harsh and ugly. You really think you can take all of us? You're good, Maddox, but you're not that good. And that deputy can't hit the broadside of a barn with that shoulder wound. He's not alone, Catherine said, stepping out of the shadows with her rifle leveled at Blackwood's chest. And before you make a mistake, Sheriff, you should know I'm aiming at your heart. My father taught me to shoot before I could read. I've won every marksmanship competition in this county for the past 6 years. So when I tell you I won't miss, you better believe it. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face. The Garrett brothers shifted nervously, their eyes darting between the 3 guns aimed at them. The math had changed. 3 skilled shooters with good positions could do serious damage before they went down. This is your last chance, Cole said. Drop your weapons and surrender, or we end this the hard way. The moment stretched like taffy, tension coiling tighter and tighter until the air itself felt explosive. Catherine could see the calculation in Blackwood's eyes, the weighing of odds and outcomes. She knew what his decision would be before he made it. Men like Blackwood didn't surrender. They'd rather die with their boots on than live in a cage. Take them. Blackwood roared, his hand flashing for his gun. The street erupted in thunder and gunsmoke. Catherine's rifle kicked against her shoulder as she fired, the sound deafening. Blackwood spun and fell, her bullet taking him in the chest exactly where she'd aimed. She didn't have time to process what she'd done, didn't have time for horror or regret. She was already working the lever action, already finding her next target as the Garrett brothers scattered and returned fire. A bullet splintered the doorframe next to her head, and Catherine dropped and rolled, coming up firing. One of the brothers fell clutching his leg, his scream cutting through the chaos. Tommy's rifle barked from above, methodical and steady despite his injury. Another gang member went down, then another. But it was Cole who was truly terrifying to witness. He moved like water through the battle, his Colt speaking in a language of smoke and lead. Every shot found its mark. Every movement was economical and precise. He wasn't just fast. He was inevitable, death wearing a black hat and a cold smile. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes, but to Catherine it felt like hours. When the gunsmoke finally cleared, 6 men lay dead or dying in the street. 2 had thrown down their weapons and were begging for mercy, their hands raised high. Blackwood lay still in the dust, his false badge glinting in the morning sun. Catherine's legs gave out, and she sat down hard, her rifle clattering to the boards. She'd killed a man. Ended a life. The reality of it crashed over her in waves, and she pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to be sick. Then Cole was there, kneeling beside her, his hands gentle despite the violence they'd just dispensed. Catherine. Look at me, darling. Look at me. She met his eyes, and found understanding there instead of judgment. You did what needed doing, Cole said softly, fiercely. You saved lives today. Tommy's life, mine, all the families who would have lost everything. That's what you focus on. Not the dying, but the living. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face, and Cole pulled her against his chest, holding her while she shook. Around them, the town was stirring, doors opening as people emerged to witness the carnage in the street. Tommy climbed down from his perch, moving slowly but alive. The 2 surviving gang members were already being bound by early rising townsfolk who'd grabbed ropes and looked ready to string them up without waiting for a trial. Is it over? Catherine whispered against Cole's shirt, which smelled like gunpowder and leather. It's over, Cole confirmed. You're safe. Your father's land is safe. It's done. But even as he said it, Catherine knew the truth. The fight might be over, but everything else was just beginning. 3 days later, Catherine sat on the porch of her father's store, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Her father had returned from Austin that morning to find his daughter famous, the land office saved, and a legendary gunslinger sitting in his store drinking coffee like he belonged there. The conversation that followed had been explosive, terrifying, and ultimately cathartic. He's an outlaw, Catherine. Robert Montgomery had shouted, his face red with fury and fear. He's got a bounty on his head. Men will come hunting him, and you'll be caught in the crossfire. He saved our land, Catherine had replied, standing her ground. He saved this entire town. And the bounty is being lifted. The territorial governor himself sent a telegram after Tommy reported everything that happened. Cole's being pardoned for his crimes in exchange for bringing down Blackwood's corruption ring. That had taken the wind out of her father's sails. He'd stared at her for a long moment, really seeing her perhaps for the first time since her mother died. You love him. I do, Catherine had admitted. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I love him, Papa. And he loves me. Now, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Cole emerged from the store carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He'd cleaned up since the fight, his face freshly shaved, his dark hair still damp from the bathhouse. He'd traded his gunslinger clothes for simple rancher's wear, though Catherine noticed he still wore his Colts. Old habits died hard, especially when they'd kept you alive for years. Your father's warming up to me, Cole said, settling beside her on the porch swing. He only threatened to shoot me twice today. That's an improvement from yesterday's 4 times. Catherine laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in days. The nightmares had started the night after the fight. She'd wake gasping, seeing Blackwood fall over and over again. But each time, Cole was there, holding her until the shaking stopped, reminding her that she'd done the right thing, that she was strong and brave and everything he'd ever wanted. He'll come around completely, Catherine said. Especially once you prove you're serious about that ranch. Cole's eyes lit up. I met with the land agent this afternoon. There's a property about 5 miles west of here. 200 acres with good water and grazing land. The previous owner died without heirs, so it's available for purchase. He paused, his expression turning serious. I've got money saved. Not all of it came from honest means, but it's enough to buy the land and build a proper house. A home. Our home, Catherine corrected, reaching for his hand. Our home, Cole agreed, his fingers lacing through hers. I was thinking about what you said. About the man I was before everything went wrong. I've been trying to remember him, that kid who believed in justice and protecting people. I think maybe, with you, I can become him again. Better version, anyway. One who's learned some hard lessons but hasn't forgotten how to hope. Catherine squeezed his hand. I don't need you to be perfect, Cole. I just need you to be honest and present and willing to build something real with me. I can do that. Cole turned to face her fully, his expression intense. But you need to understand something. There might be men who don't care about the pardon. Men who'll come looking for the reputation of taking down Cole Maddox. I won't let anything happen to you, but there's risk in loving me. There's risk in everything worth having, Catherine replied. My mother used to say that safety is an illusion. That the only real security comes from knowing someone will stand beside you when the storms come. She met his eyes steadily. Will you stand beside me, Cole? Through whatever comes. Until my last breath. Cole's voice was rough with emotion. I'll build you the life you deserve. I'll work that ranch until my hands bleed. I'll become the man this town can respect, the man your father can accept. And every night, I'll thank whatever power brought me to your door that morning. And about what you said, Catherine's cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze, that night before the fight. About me not being a virgin for long if we survived. Cole's eyes darkened with heat. I remember. Every word. We survived, Catherine whispered. We built something together in blood and gunsmoke. Now I want to build something else. Something beautiful and lasting in ours. Cole stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Your father will kill me if I dishonor you before we're married. Then we better get married quickly. Catherine smiled against his chest. I'm not known for my patience. Tomorrow, Cole decided suddenly. We'll ride to the church tomorrow morning and have Reverend Thomas marry us. No big ceremony, no waiting. Just you and me making promises we intend to keep. Tomorrow, Catherine agreed, her heart soaring. It was fast, reckless even. But everything about them had been fast and reckless from the moment he'd walked into her store. Why should their wedding be any different? That night, after her father had gone to bed still muttering about outlaws and improper courtships, Catherine stood at her window watching the stars. Cole was camped outside town, respecting propriety now that the danger had passed. But tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow she'd become Catherine Maddox, wife to a reformed gunslinger, partner in building a new life. She thought about her mother, about the advice she'd given about strong women and the West. About coffee and shooting and earning respect. Catherine had done all of that. She'd stood against evil with a rifle in her hands. She'd killed to protect what she loved. She'd claimed her right to choose her own path, her own man, her own future. The scared girl who'd stood on this porch 3 days ago watching a stranger ride into town was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her own strength, who'd faced death and come out the other side transformed. She'd found love in the most unlikely place, with the most unlikely man. And tomorrow, she'd begin the greatest adventure of all. Miles away, Cole lay under the stars and thought about redemption. About second chances and new beginnings. About a woman with fire in her eyes and steel in her spine who'd seen past his reputation to the man he'd been desperately trying to become. He'd come to Redemption Creek seeking revenge and found salvation instead. His brother Lucas would have liked Catherine. Would have understood why Cole was willing to trade his guns for a plow, his reputation for a quiet life building something lasting. Lucas had always said Cole had too much heart for the outlaw life. That one day he'd find something worth dying for, and more importantly, worth living for. As the sun rose the next morning, painting the desert in shades of pink and orange, Cole rode into Redemption Creek one last time as a free man. By noon, he'd be married, his wild days officially behind him. By evening, he'd be starting work on the ranch that would be his legacy, his contribution to the world beyond violence and death. Catherine met him at the church in a simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders the way he loved it. There were no guests except her father, Tommy, and a handful of townspeople who'd come to witness the union of the woman who'd saved their land and the gunslinger who'd saved their town. Reverend Thomas spoke about redemption and forgiveness, about love that transforms and faith that endures. But Cole barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Catherine, at the woman who'd taken his blood-stained hands and promised him a future. The woman who'd stood beside him in battle and would stand beside him in peace. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Catherine with all the tenderness and passion burning in his soul. Around them, the small gathering applauded, but they might as well have been alone in the world. This was their moment, their beginning, their promise to each other and to the life they'd build together. As they rode toward their new ranch that afternoon, Catherine leaned against Cole's shoulder on the wagon seat, watching the prairie stretch out before them like a promise. Behind them lay violence and loss, fear and death. Ahead lay work and struggle, the challenges of building something from nothing. But they'd face it together, bound by love forged in fire and tested in blood. No regrets? Cole asked, his arm tightening around her waist. Catherine thought about everything she'd given up. Her safe, predictable life. Her reputation as a proper young lady. The simple future she'd imagined for herself before a stranger rode into town and changed everything. Not a single one, she said honestly. You asked me once if some things were worth dying for. I told you that some things were worth living for instead. This is that thing, Cole. Us. Our future. Our home. This is worth everything. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop and kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the taste of new beginnings and second chances. When they finally pulled apart, he urged the horses forward again, toward the land that would become their ranch, their legacy, their redemption. The sun set over Redemption Creek, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, and in its light, two souls who'd found each other in the darkest of circumstances rode toward the brightest of futures. The Wild West had tested them, tried them, and forged them into something stronger together than they'd ever been apart. And in the distance, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the land itself whispering its approval, welcoming home two lost souls who'd finally found where they belonged.